Welcome to Storytime with Chris Horner. We're 2 days away from the Tour de France in 2024 starting up. And after this year's Tour de France, after the individual time trial in Nice, the riders got 2 weeks to get ready for the 2024 Men's Olympic Road Race. Well, I want to take you back more than a decade to the 2012 Olympic Road Race. That year, I was a member of the 5-rider USA cycling team, but before that, I was finishing up the Tour de France. I'd finished 13th on the general classification. We'd had Stage 1 prologue winner Fabian Cancellara in the race leader's yellow jersey, so Radio Shack had considered that 2012 Tour de France as a success. Now, I fast forward a week later when we started the Men's Olympic Road Race. As I'd finished up the Tour de France on Monday, I jumped on a flight with my wife. We flew over to London and we got picked up from USA Cycling. Got brought over to the men's hotel. 5 riders were starting for USA Cycling. On that 4 riders list there, we had the 4 T's. Timmy Dugan was there, Taylor Phinney was there, TJ Van Garderen was there, and Tyler Farrar, our sprinter for USA, he was there too to make 5 riders when you add the list of me to it. Now with those 5 riders, as we were getting ready in the meeting the night before the Olympic road race, the director sportif, Mike Sayers, looked at me and said, "Horner, you're the veteran here. You're 40 years of age. I was doing my first Olympic road race. I've been trying to get to the Olympics since 1996 and missed every 4 years of being part of the Olympic team throughout my career until 2012. Now I'm there the night before. Mike Sayers is saying, with your experience, we have no race radios. We have no way to communicate with you guys, except for we're going to have some signs in the feed zone done by color so that we're going to hold up a board. If it's green, that means we're happy with the situation currently. If it's red, well, we got to start chasing and you're going to have to figure out what's going on tactically in the race." Now, the next morning is an early start for us. The Men's Olympic Road Race was one of the first Olympic venues to start off there in 2012. So it was bright and early, 5 a.m., wake up, jump on the bus, take the bus over to the famous parts there in London as we were going to be leaving out through the mall. And once we lined up there early in the morning, you see the Great Britain team in front. There's the Prince there. He's introducing himself to the GB team in front. And when you start looking at that stacked GB roster, well, let me remind you guys, 2012, they won the Tour de France with Bradley Wiggins. He's up there in that front row there saying hi to the Prince, soon to be king. Well, a few decades, at least a decade later anyways, king now. But as he's introducing himself to Wiggins, to Chris Froome, to the 3-time stage winner of the 2012 Tour de France, the sprinter there, Mark Cavendish, who's starting this year's Tour de France trying to win 35, there's a ton of talent on the GB team. Even David Miller up there won a stage in the Tour de France in 2012. So 4 of the 5 riders from GB are stage winners, Tour de France winners. And when we look at the 5th rider, that's Ian Stannard, the Super Domestique. He's won some big one-day races, but hasn't won a stage of the Tour de France, but everyone else on their team has. We start looking at other guys that are around me. As you start seeing, I'm just behind the Great Britain team. I'm leaning over to the left, having a little conversation with Philippe Gilbert. Well, Philippe Gilbert's worn some race leaders' yellow jerseys at the Tour de France and won some stages himself. We start looking at some of the other talent. Well, Peter Sagan's there, and he's up on the front row near me too. As we see the Slovakian rider, well, he won 3 stages of the 2012 Tour de France. Alejandro Valverde there, stage winner of the 12 Tour de France. And we start looking at Vincenzo Nibali with the serious look on his face. Well, he went podium 3rd overall at that year's Tour de France. So the roster here is stacked, getting ready to start the Olympic road race. As the race rolls out, we're going nice and easy through the mall and through all the famous sections of London, and we're curb to curb, but the pace is super mellow. Now, as the race is starting to leave the mall and things are getting a little more picked up, we're still kind of curb to curb, not going full gas. And if I take you back to the meeting at USA Cycling, we knew in that meeting that Mark Cavendish was the big-time favorite to win the Men's Olympic Road Race. Like I said, won 3 stages of the Tour de France. On remarkable form. The 3 stages that he won at the Tour de France, you'll say, well, he's won 3 stages before, 4 stages even in a single edition of the Tour de France. But in 2012, he was remarkable, guys. I had seen that Mark Cavendish going over with the front group at the Tour de France, 3 climbs into stages, riding the front for Froome and for Wiggins, wearing the race leader's yellow jersey that edition, and still winning stages later. He was remarkable and on beautiful form. So we knew in the riders' meeting that we needed the racing to be hard. We needed it to be hard right away, and we were hoping other teams were thinking the same way as we were. So with about 15 kilometers to go, I had chatted a little bit with Lars Boom from the Netherlands, and while I was chatting with him, I said, hey, we got to get this stuff going. we're going a little bit too easy. We need this racing harder. You want to just start the attacks? Maybe we'll get in the first break, maybe not. Hopefully we don't, but we got to get some action going. Well, Lars Boom wasn't biting, so I just kind of rolled off the front of the peloton. As you see me rolling off in front of the best riders in the world right behind me at the Men's Olympic Road Race, let me take you back a few days after I arrived at the Olympic Hotel there for USA Cycling. Well, a spare bike had arrived for me. Actually, my first bike. It was a custom painted Olympic USA Cycling Team bike from Trek. They had mailed it over. I'd flown over from the Tour de France with my Tour de France bike. When I got there and I started training on that custom painted bike, well, the bike wasn't really braking well. Something was wrong. They were functioning, yes, they were grabbing the rims and all that stuff and putting pressure on them, but the bike wasn't slowing down at the rate of speed that it should be. Many times throughout the 4 days while we were there training, before this moment as I'm coming down the hill there with the peloton right behind me, many times when I was training, I was switching back and forth between bikes as the mechanic was trying to figure out why the brakes weren't working up to snuff for me throughout the 4 training days. Each time I'd switch back bikes, we were changing the power meter, my SRM power meter, from my Tour de France bike over to my Olympic bike and then back again. Well, as we're coming down this turn, they had it all well marked out, and I knew it was more than a 90-degree turn, as it was almost 180. Now I'm coming down the descent super fast. I go to get on the brakes. They're not working still. I can't get the bike to slow down at all. I'm squeezing as hard as I can. And then I'm realizing that I'm in big time trouble. As I'm leading the front of the peloton here, I'm coming into this more than 90-degree turn, fast speed. I realize I'm not going to make it, so I grab as much brake as I possibly can and just squeeze 100%, lock up the back wheel, and I'm sliding the bike so that I can hit the curb sideways. I don't want to hit it forward like this and flip over the bars and go into the fans. I want to hit it sideways, and when I do, I realize as I'm locking up the brakes that there's blocks up to the side of the curb. I assume it's there so that the cars can't pull up on the curb when they're parking on normal days here in London. As I slide it in, I unclip my left foot, I put my left foot up on the block, and I go up on the block, and the momentum's carrying me over. I'm kind of high side and going over into the crowd where there's a fencing there. I actually never touch the ground. The crowd basically moss pitched me, and they hold me up, and they just kind of toss me back over the fencing that you'll see the guardrail there between the block and the guardrail, and they drop me right back right between the two as I never once touched the ground. I thought, well, that's kind of remarkable. But now the peloton's going full gas. Everybody's attacking like crazy. And as you see me put my bike on the curb there, just next to the road, I put it on the curb, and you would take a look at the picture. Well, the back tire's flat. The whole peloton goes by me going Mach speed. Now all attacking like crazy up there, and the peloton's getting strung out. But I'm back there with a flat tire. I hop on my bike, and I realize I'm in trouble as I start pedaling my bike. The back wheel's swaying all over the place because the tire's completely flat. And I'm looking backwards with my hand up trying to get the USA Cycling Team car up to me. At this moment, I realize I'm in trouble because when I look back, if I back the film up, I'll show you something that BMW did. They were a sponsor of the Men's Olympic Road Race, and they were super nice to give every team nationality here a BMW car to drive. And the problem is, though, they sent them all in silver. Let me show you some of the pictures of the car. All the cars are silver. So when I'm at the back of the peloton getting dropped with a rear flat tire looking back for my team car, every car I'm looking at is silver BMWs. You're like, Chris, why don't you look up at the top of the roof rack and just see which one has your team bikes up there? Well, remember, we're all riding for different teams because we're riding for your nation right here at the Olympic Road Race. So all the bikes on the top are their trade teams, so they're all different. I can give you an example of Fabian Cancellara, who raced for Radio Shack, like I told you, at the Tour de France. He's got a bike that probably looks just like my bike at the top of a silver BMW. That's at the top of the silver BMW for me. So as I'm panicking, wondering whether or not I'm going to see my director's car back there, all of a sudden a hand comes out of the silver BMW. It's Mike Sayers, the director for USA Cycling. His hand's waving out of the car left and right as he's trying to wave me down, yelling and screaming out the window. And as I pull over to the right side of the road, he fixes the back wheel on my bike, gives me a push, and I take off again. But I get a little bit disciplined because I changed on the right side of the road. If you're a European pro cyclist, you know you always change on the right side of the road. But we're in London, they do everything in reverse, right? I don't know if it's wrong, I don't know if it's right, but I know it's not what we're accustomed to because we're supposed to change on the left side of the road. And that part of the story will come in later here at story time. Now, as he disciplined me a little bit, I get back up to the back of the peloton. We got 12 riders going up the road. Timmy Dugan, USA Cycling, he's done a fabulous job to get in the early break here and start putting pressure on Great Britain. That's starting to ride the front, and they got a little bit of help from Vasily Kirienka there, the Belarus rider, riding on the front with GB. That means they got 6 riders, not 5, so that's going to be a big-time help for Chris Froome, Friggins, and for all the super domestiques there trying to lead out Cavendish here today with 250 kilometers of racing. Now I'm back there at the back of the peloton. That group of 12 is going up the road. They got 3 minutes. It'll extend out to about 4.5 when they get on the 15-kilometer circuit, about 60K out from the start of today's men's Olympic road race. As you see my hand go up in the back there at the back of the peloton, that's because I'm realizing there's no way that I can get through this 250-kilometer race on a bike that brakes aren't functioning correctly. Now, Mike Sayers had changed the rear wheel, so got me back to the back of the peloton. We didn't have time to go for a bike. But now the thing's starting to slow down up front with GB pulling, so I'm figuring it's time to change back to my Tour de France bike there that has some brakes. As my arm goes up, the car will pull up and I'll switch back to my Tour de France bike. Now I race back to the back of the peloton and we're kind of coming off what's the leading beginning part here of the Olympic road race, the first 60 kilometers as we're nearing the circuit with Box Hill. Box Hill's about a 3-kilometer climb. We'll call it 1.5 difficult, 1.2 maybe, where it has some steep pitches and some switchbacks. So you know you have to be in good position, and the peloton's completely stressed. That's why we see them going curb to curb. Now, the problem is it's been chaos throughout the men's Olympic road race with the fans. They are massive in size. I mean, it's unbelievable chaos. And as we're coming nearing the circuit, we'll see a fan stepping out on the left side of the road. Well, he wants to get a picture, right? The difference between the fans here at the Olympics versus the Tour de France or any big cycling event is that these are Olympic fans. They're not sporting fans and they're not cycling fans. Olympic fans come every 4 years and they may not know anything about cycling. So this fan, he's sitting out there trying to do a picture like this. We'll see the rider in green. He's going to try to duck, but he's going to tag that spectator. I know because I'm behind watching the whole thing happen live. And as that spectator's flying off to the side of the road, the peloton of riders that hit the rider, they're going to go all the way over and it's going to shuffle and there's going to be a massive crash right at this moment because that spectator needed a little picture with his camera as he went flying off to the side. And I'm missing the crash as it's moving all the way to the right of the peloton there, blocking up the road. I'm coming up the left. I see his camera just doing circles, spinning like this as I go by, and I'm like, I wonder what that picture looked like. Well, as I get back up to the group, we're coming into the circuit, and it's getting crazy nervous. Now, that fan probably cost a lot of riders Olympic dreams right here in that big crash right there, but as I'm focusing on myself and we're coming into the circuit, we're starting Box Hill. The breakaway of 12 up there, like I said, they probably got about a 4.5-minute gap on the peloton being led by GB, having a little bit of help from Vasily Kirienka right there that the following year, he'll ride for Team Sky, so maybe there's some connection there. Either way, GB's doing a great job at the front, and I'm salvaging something at the back because there's chaos happening all over the place as I've just gotten myself to the back when Box Hill starts proper. As we go up over the climb, we're going to go through the feed zone, and we're going to be about 2 laps, if not 3 laps into the race. And I'll show you a picture after the feed zone as we're starting the descent side of this 15-kilometer circuit here of the men's Olympic road race. I'm off to the right side of the peloton there. Now, after this moment here, I don't have the picture of me having to stop, but something really funky happens with my pedals, something I've never felt before. And at this moment, I'm 40 years of age and pretty experienced of riding a bike because I've been riding a bike since I was 13 years old. And at this moment, I feel the left shoe do something funny as I'm pedaling like this. It kind of flexes a little bit, flexes, and I'm like, what is that? And then all of a sudden, the whole crank arm comes off the bike. As the crank arm comes off the bike, I hear this incredibly weird noise of it's just a tapping. Well, what's happening? I look down to the left side to try to figure out what's happening as my left foot's moving all over. Well, the crank arm came off the bike. My shoe's still attached to the pedal that's attached to the crank arm, but it's not attached to the bike. And as my leg is extended down, it's literally sitting there on the concrete and the crank arm's bouncing on the concrete like this as we're doing 50, 70 kilometers an hour. I'm on the right side of the peloton, but I got to get over to the left because we're in London, we're not in Europe, and you got to change on the left. Now I'll show you a picture as we're coming down this narrow descent. There's trees everywhere. There's fans hiding out in the trees trying to watch the race because all of the Olympic sports here in 2012 were getting filled up, and this is day one, so they all came to the road race, and they're literally hiding in the bushes. As I'm finding my way over to the left side, we're going down this crazy descent, going super fast, super narrow as I showed you the pictures. Now I got to find a place to pull over. I finally get out of the bushes, and as the road passes through all the bushes, I move over to the left, and I'm flying into what looks like just a ton of fans on the left side of the road. I pull into the fans, I hop off my bike, but remember, my foot's still attached to the shoe that's attached to the pedal that's attached to the crank arm. What happened? Well, if I take you back to the beginning, the first 4 days before the Olympic road race, remember in the story I told you I was changing bikes back and forth as they were trying to fix the bike that had already crashed 15 kilometers into the race. And when they were switching the cranks back and forth for the power meter, they forgot to tighten the bolts, these 2 bolts on the crank arm right here, so it had fallen off, but it's still attached to my foot. And I'm sitting on the left side of the road. As I'm sitting on the left side of the road, there's silver BMWs passing by me at super speed. I just, there's a silver BMW, and I'm trying to pull the crank arm off my shoe, but you got to bend down to do it. And if I have to bend down to do it, I can't see USA Cycling silver BMW car. Now, I don't know how Mike Sayers, the director sportif driving the car in the 2012, I don't know how he knew where I was because I was in a horde of fans. And at that moment, I thought for sure all of the silver BMWs would pass me. And I thought I'd be taking the bus back into London for the 2012 Olympics to watch it live on the side of the road. Well, to my disbelief, Mike Sayers comes flying into the left side. I see this silver BMW locking up the brakes. The fans are jumping out of the way. The front end is dipping down like this as he's hitting the brakes hard. He comes to a standstill, and I still have my shoe attached to my pedal, attached to my crank at the bottom of my foot on the ground. As I'm reaching over trying to pull this off, I see the mechanic jumping out of the car. Now, I don't know how to tell him, because we don't have race radios, that you have to bring the bike that doesn't have any brakes that I've already crashed on, that you have to bring that to me and I have to switch bikes because I don't have any cranks on my bike. So I finally get the pedal off with one big yank. After about 20 times of yanking on it, I pull it as hard as I can as the mechanic stepping out of the car, and I hold up the crank arm with the pedal attached to it. I hope this is code sign right here to the mechanic that, well, you better bring my spare bike. That isn't really my spare bike. It's my original bike that doesn't work, but this bike definitely doesn't work because it has no cranks on it. Well, the mechanic runs over. He gives me back my USA Special custom painted Trek bike. As I jump on it, I start heading down the hill. Mike Sayers flies back up to me, and now I'm probably about a minute and a half, 2 minutes off of the back of the peloton. But more importantly, I'm not in the caravan. Now, I'll show you a picture up front as the peloton and the breakaways passing by some of the spectators on the side of the road at a different moment, but at the same place where I was at this moment in the race. As the peloton's going by, look at the spectators there on the side, on the left side of the picture, and then look down by their feet as you see the cooler and you see their camera bags down by their feet. Well, imagine now that I'm coming behind the caravan. Up in front would have been the breakaway that passed these viewers and spectators with their bags at their feet. So they would have stayed out the side of the road. They would have let the break go by. They would have moved back, hopefully, but we're at the Olympics, not at the Tour de France, so they probably stayed out in the road. And as the caravan went by after the peloton, they probably thought, that's it. We can meander back onto the road. We can have a good time. But guess what? Chris Horner's flying by with the car doing 70 miles an hour. As the mechanic's sticking out the window, he's giving me a push the whole time trying to get me to the back of the caravan. The fans are jumping madly out of the way to try to avoid getting hit. But as they're jumping out, that camera bag, that cooler, that's getting left in the road. So I'm coming by on the side of the car with the mechanic holding out the window, doing something to my bike, or at least making it look that way, as he's shoving his shoulder into me. And I'm dodging the camera bags and stuff and the coolers on the road as the fans are jumping out of the way, not thinking there'd be anyone else back there. Mike Sayers does a phenomenal job of getting me to the back of the caravan now. Now remember, the caravan's 30, 40, 50 cars long. It's super long behind the peloton here at the Olympic road race. So I'm back to the back of the caravan and I'm flying by the cars as fast as I can, 70, 80 kilometers an hour. And I'll show you a picture as the road starts to widen here on this 15 kilometer, 16 kilometer circuit of the Olympics. It widens out to about 3 lanes. That means there's enough space now where I can start going full gas. I'm on the pedals doing everything I can, passing the cars. But now I got something happening in front of me, and this is going to be a dangerous, chaotic moment here for me on 2012 at the Olympic road race. As I'm coming down to the center of the road, one of the mechanics or cars is pulling over to the left side. He's pulling over to the left because the rider's having a problem and you're supposed to change on the left. As that's happening, one of the riders is having a mechanical problem, but he's pulling over to the right, and that car in front of me is moving over to the right, hitting the brakes. Only problem is it's only 3-lane wide, so I'm shooting down the middle, but I got the cars that are still going fast coming up from behind me as I'm starting to slow down as the car's pulling over to the right. Well, as I'm behind the car pulling over to the right, it comes to a stop, and now I'm still coming up super fast, 70 kilometers an hour. As that car pulls over and stops, the mechanic jumps out of the left seat. Now, what's the big deal about that? Well, that's why the riders have to pull over on the left, because we're in reverse here in London, and the mechanic's sitting on the left side. The door opens up to the grass side, so the mechanic doesn't have to worry that pulled over to the left. But the mechanic on the right, who's director sportif, had to pull over to the right because of his rider. His door opens up to the traffic. That's my lane. That's the only space I have in a 3-lane road when you got 2 cars pulled over and cars going fast through the middle. I'm hitting everything I can on these brakes, but remember, they're not fantastic brakes, so I'm squeezing with everything. Finally, I get the back wheel to lock up. I'm sliding the bike like this. I got it pitched over. Back end's coming out here to the right. As the mechanic had opened the door on me, I'm flying straight at his door. His eyes open up all wide, looks at me. He dives back into the back seat. As I got the back wheel locked up, the cars that are still driving, that are following in the caravan, one car passes straight by me. As soon as his back end, his bumper passes me, I just let go of the brakes, because either it's going into the mechanic's door that just opened up on me, or I'm going to crash into the car that's coming behind the car that just passed me. But the back bumper comes by me, I let go of the brakes. I just missed the doors that come behind the car that's flying by me, and luckily the car behind him must have saw me, because he left enough space for me to fill the gap. I shoot by the 2 cars on the left side and the right side of the road. Once I do, I sit up, take a big old deep breath. I looked back over my shoulder and looked back at the mechanic there as he was getting back out of the car. My eyes were all wide, and I was like, wow, this is the most dangerous racing I've ever done in the dry. It's been chaos from the start of the race. I've already crashed 15 kilometers into it. I've battled against spectators with cameras. I've been hitting the brakes left and right all over the place. My crank arm's falling off. I've been holding onto the car at 70 miles an hour going uphill. I've been dodging coolers. I've dodged the mechanic's door, and we're only halfway into the race. Well, I get my head back into the race again. I get back up to the back of the peloton. Now I'll show you a picture that I found while I was watching the race this week here before the Tour de France starts proper. And as I'm coming up to the back of the peloton there, I see Ryder Hesjedal. He loves to ride at the back, right? If you watch my videos, I always tell you never ride at the back, but I come up there to Ryder Hesjedal. I look over to my right and I go, Ryder, how is it back here? He's like, it's not so bad. I'm like, oh man, because it's bad everywhere else. I almost died like 5 times already. I get back there, I get everything a little bit under control, and then I start finding my way back up to the front. Now, during that whole first half of the race, that chaos was all happening to me. TJ Van Gardner, he's been attacking, and Taylor Phinney's been attacking, but now TJ is back in the front of the peloton there as I'm finding my way up to the front. I'll show you the elevated view there from the helicopter, and you'll see me riding up next to TJ Van Gardner. I look up to TJ, I'm like, what's going on? Remember, I'm the old veteran here of the 5 riders, and I was supposed to be leading the team, but TJ hasn't seen me for 50% of the race, if not 60% of the race. He looks over to me, he's like, where you been? Well, I wanted to tell him the whole story that I wasn't back there having a barbecue, but there's not enough time. I just told him it was been complicated, and I'll tell you later. Now, as I'm still at the front of the race, all of a sudden I start losing a little bit of vision, right? You're like, hey, come on, Chris, it can't be that bad. It's this bad. This is literally my Olympic road race spot on here details. As I start losing my vision, I get a vision from about the shoulder of the rider to his saddle, and that's about the most I can see is that, as everything around me is all becoming pixels and I can't see anything outside of that vision little window right there. And if I bring you back to the crash with about 15 kilometers beginning here at the Olympic road race, when I flew off into the mosh pit there of fans that kept me from hitting the ground, well, one of them smacked me really hard here in the head, and it was all bruised underneath my ear here. So clearly I was getting some kind of signs of concussion. So I was starting to panic a little bit because I wanted to finish the Olympics. Now, every rider's dream, every athlete's dream, every kid's dream, male, female, whoever you are, when you're a kid, is all about doing the Olympics. I'm 40 years old. I finally got there. I don't want to tell my kids at home that, well, yes, I made it to the Olympics, but I didn't finish. I want to at least be able to finish. I know realistically, to be able to win in 2012, you got to have some speed, you got to be a sprinter, but I know I can finish. Now I can't see though. I literally can see the shoulder down to the saddle, so I decided to drop back to the back of the peloton where it's a little bit calmer back there, and I go back there and I'm eating everything, drinking my bottle and everything like I show you in the picture here, and I'm putting in about 1,500 calories, and it takes another lap or two before my vision starts coming back. So if you ever watched the 2012 Olympics men's road race, don't think that, well, Chris was riding at the back of the peloton after he tells us to always ride at the front. I was riding at the back because I had a concussion. I was riding at the back because it's total chaos. I was riding because I crashed. I was riding because I lost my crank arm. Well, things start to finally come back vision-wise after I put down a ton of calories. And once we start getting in the final laps, the action has been hot and heavy throughout this whole 200 kilometers at this moment, because we still got to leave the circuit. But we're coming up to the last lap, and we're coming into Box Hill there for the last time. TJ Van Gardneren, he's up the road. Taylor Finney's up the road. Timmy Dugan is still up there. So USA Cycling has 3 riders in a group of about 35 riders up there that's been blowing up and coming back together. But eventually those 35 will get together over the top of Box Hill for the last passes. And as we're coming into the start of Box Hill, I'll show you the aerial shot there as I have Tyler Farrar on my wheel. Now, Farrar's fantastic sprinter. He's won stages of the Tour de France, Spain, and Italy, so his list of accomplishments, and when it comes to field sprinting, there's not many that can beat him with those 3 wins at 3 different Grand Tours. So I'm leading him into the last left turn here to start Box Hill, and that's why you see me in front, and you see Tyler on my wheel. I get all the way up there, and I'm drag racing with the GB guys. Remember, these guys have been on the front all day long, but I've had some chaos throughout this road race myself, so I'm going full gas, and I want to get them just to the back wheel of Mark Cavendish. As we come through the left turn, you'll see me just a little bit on the right side, and you see Tyler there just one spot behind Mark Cavendish in perfect position. I was like, okay, I did something here at the Olympic Road Race. Now you got to stay focused, because the last time up this climb, there's going to be attacks all over the place on Mark Cavendish's GB team. Now they're still riding the front with Chris Froome. Bradley Wiggins is up there. Stannard's done an amazing job, and David Miller's been riding the front too, along with some help from the Germans. The Germans got Andre Greipel, and he's won a stage of the Tour de France in his career too. So they're all interested in a field sprint. The attacks start happening up front in the breakaway, and it starts splitting up. But like I said, they'll come together over the top. And then behind, I'm in a group of 6 or 7 there, but just sitting on, because I got 3 riders up the front, and I got a sprinter behind me in the field. So I don't need to do any work up here in this group of 7 until GB comes back together. They'll catch my group, but not the group of 30, 35 riders in front. We go up there for a little bit of more history here at the 2012 Olympics. Well, TJ Van Gardner, he's pulling full gas in this group, because Finney's got some speed and could possibly win a gold medal here in 2012. He's on the front. We see Alejandro Valverde, Spanish team, they're pulling like crazy on the front. And the Swiss team is pulling heavy on the front, because Fabian Cancellara is in this group. So you got 3 nationalities at the front pulling with a little bit of help from Italy. That almost makes 4. You look back at the peloton, it's the Germans, it's Chris Froome from GB pulling back there with Wiggins and Stanner going full gas. And I'm thinking, okay, this is great. I just got to ride this gravy train all the way into the finish as we're leaving Box Hill Circuit and coming back into the last 50 kilometers to finish up the men's Olympic road race. If I can get through the last 50K, I get to tell my kids at home, yes, I'm an Olympian, and yes, I did finish the road race. But there's one more obstacle. As we're leaving the circuit, we're on this slight descent, about 3%, something pretty soft. And then all of a sudden, Tyler comes back to me and says, I got to do a nature break. I'm like, you got to do a nature break right now? We got Chris Froome, we got Bradley Wiggins riding the front, going full gas, chasing 35 guys up there. And we got the Germans pulling on the front of the peloton. It's going Mach speed. And Tyler's got to take a nature break. I'm like, okay, man. Make it as fast as you can. I take my hand, just shove it into his hip and start pushing him as he starts taking a nature break off the bike. Now, Tyler Farrar, he's a sprinter, so you know he's a big guy. I'm 137 pounds, maybe 135 at this moment after losing some water with all the chaos for the first 200 kilometers. And I got my hand going into his hip full gas as he's taking a nature break. Then the road starts to climb up 3%. I'm doing 600 watts pushing this big sprinter. Finally, I'm like, after a minute of doing 600 watts, I'm like, Tyler, you got to put it away, pinch it off, put it away, let's get going. He's like, I'm almost done. He looks back at me, finishes, puts it away, and then sprints straight across to the back of the peloton, leaves me out there floundering like a fish out of water. And I'm thinking, man, I got to do 600 watts for 30 more seconds if I'm going to be up there in the peloton and finish the men's Olympic road race. Well, I put in another 30, 40 seconds worth of effort, get to the back of the peloton, bring you to the front of the group of 30. Well, things started getting exciting up there. We started seeing some attacks with about 15 kilometers to go. Then Fabian Cancellara from Switzerland, the big-time favorite to win here, a gold medal. He comes into the right turn. Back brake has to lock up a little bit, loses the front end and crashes. His dreams are over. Now this is changing the whole chemistry of the race, and we're just under 10 kilometers to go because now Swiss aren't going to be up there pulling for Fabian Cancellara. So the attacks start. We'll see Denmark's Jakob Fuglsang throwing in attack, and we look behind him. Alexander Vinnicroft is first back there chasing, but we'll see Finney's on his wheel. Finney has to close the gap because Alexander Vinnicroft looks back at him, so Finney closes up to Jakob Fuglsang there and does a big effort, and then Alexander Vinnicroft throws in an attack going up the left side. On the right side is Colombia there. That's Rigoberto Urán. As those two come together, Look back at the group in second place. There's Taylor Phinney. He's being told from the rider in front of him, Jakob Fuglsang, that he doesn't want to close the gap. Phinney can't close the gap because he already closed up there, the Fuglsang. So the two riders in front, now they got a gap of about 5-10 seconds. That turns into about 10 as they're going full gas. We go under 1K to go. We see the Colombian rider there, Rigoberto Urán. He's leading there with a Kazakhstan rider, Alexander Vinokurov. As we look up front, Rigoberto Urán's looking over his shoulder, back and right, left and right with 500 meters to go. 300 meters to go. He looks right. When he looks left, Vinokurov throws an attack going up the right side, gets a gap, wins a gold medal here at the 2012 Olympics, and Rigoberto Urán will cross for silver. We look back in the group of chasers. Well, Alexander Kristoff rounds out the podium for third for a bronze, and then Taylor Phinney, USA Cycling, gets a fine fourth. Well, what happened to me? Well, the peloton back there was going to be a field sprint. I backed off, lost about 40 seconds, but rode in safe. And then when you see after the race, you see Taylor Phinney over there sitting on the curb with his teammates wrapped around him. I roll into the picture just afterwards, and Taylor Phinney's all upset about getting fourth. Let me remind you, his dad, Davis Phinney, and his mom, Connie Carpenter, they're medal winners themselves, so you got to know their kid, Taylor Phinney, right now at this moment, he's a little distraught about getting fourth and missing out on the medals. I come up to him and come into the group there as I'm the last rider to arrive coming from the back of the peloton. I tap him on the shoulder and say, man, don't worry about it. You got fourth today, but you're young. You'll come back. You'll win a gold here one of these days at the Olympics. And with that, I will remind all you guys that cycling is a bit of ups and downs, but these beautiful sad moments are what makes sports so fantastic. The riders getting ready to start the 24 Tour de France. They have the Olympics coming up. I want to remind them something that they need to keep very close to them. When you leave the Tour de France, where it's super organization, the organization is fabulous, and they know how to put on cycling races. When you go to the Olympic venue, they don't know cycling. They know sports. The fans don't know cycling. Some of them don't even know sports. They're just Olympic fans and show up, and they don't know to step out of the road, and they don't know to jump out of the way with their cameras and their coolers and take them with them. But the organizers themselves, I can show you when we went through the feed zone on that 15-kilometer course at the top of Box Hill. Once you come in with help from your team, from your national team, these guys don't have the experience that your trade team has. If I show you in the feed zone where we show you the feeder there from China, she's sitting there up on the curb trying to feed while we see the German feeder out in the road where he has to be in order to feed his team. This is causing chaos. When we went through the feed zone, it was terribly organized there at the Olympic road race. It was only 2 lanes. The feeders are already out. You got the fencing on the left side. You got bottles that have no place to go. If I show you the curb height of the grass there, everybody dropping their bottles would hit that curb and it'd come back into the peloton. We were dodging bottles. We were dodging the soigneurs that were feeding us. Everyone that needs to be part of the Olympic road race needs to have some kind of experience, but they never do. It's not your trade team. So all the young pros that are coming into the Olympic road race, make sure you're prepared. Make sure both of your bikes work properly. The brakes have to work properly. The cranks got to be attached to your bike properly because that can ruin your day. And you got to remember to keep heads up when it comes to your teammates, because your teammates aren't the ones you normally race with, so everything's new to you. That's why in 2012 at the Olympic road race, it was the most chaotic race I'd ever done in the dry in my life, and a moment that I'll never forget. But like Taylor Phinney, my day went bad, but when bad days come, there's still a story to tell you guys sitting on the Chesterfield. So something good always comes out of it, and I love the highs and lows of doing sports. Even the lows you got to appreciate. There's always a time when it comes back up. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Hopefully you enjoyed Storytime as much as I did. I'll see you guys for Beyond the Coverage and, of course, the Butterfly Effect for the 24 Tour de France starting on Saturday. It's going to be amazing. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys real soon.